What if I told you that you could design and live the life that you want on your own terms? Would you do it? Would you take a leap into the unknown? Or would you settle for a life of limits, a life of safety but lacking true meaning? Zephan Moses Blacksburg here, and I'm on a journey to help you ignite your inner passions, let go of your fears, and get more out of life. Will you join me and make this year your year of purpose? Welcome to the Year of Purpose podcast. Welcome, Year of Purpose podcast viewers and listeners. I'm Zephan Blacksburg, your host, and today I have Dr. Carri Drzyzga. She's known as the Functional Medicine Doc, the go-to expert on finding the root causes of health problems so you can feel normal again. She's a chiropractor and naturopathic doctor, host of the popular podcast, The Functional Medicine Radio Show, and author of the hit book, Reclaim Your Energy and Feel Normal Again, fixing the root cause of your fatigue with natural treatments. Dr. Carri's newest program is Entrepreneurial Fatigue, how to fuel your brain and body for entrepreneurial success. Her private practice is Functional Medicine Ontario, located in Ottawa, Ontario. Dr. Carri, thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. You know, I've been listening to your podcast and I love the idea of the Year of Purpose. Awesome. I just love it.
Thank you so much for listening in. I wanted to get started with functional medicine. You know, a lot of people actually haven't really heard of it or don't really know what it is or why they should be looking into it. So if you don't mind sharing with us a little bit about what is functional medicine and why is it important for us?
Sure, you're right, Dad. People really don't know what functional medicine is because they haven't heard of it. So in a nutshell, it's about finding the cause, fixing the cause so that you can feel normal again. So by finding the cause, it's understanding that really everything in your body is connected. And from a purely biochemistry standpoint, understanding how the hormones interact with the brain, which interacts with the digestive tract, which interacts with everything else. So to really find the root underlying cause of where the symptoms are coming from, and then to fix that, which would include things like diet changes, getting the right amount of exercise and sleep, taking the right vitamins, herbs, and supplements, stress management, all of those kind of things to really get the body back into balance so that you get your health back, so that you not only feel normal again, but you're at a whole new state of health. So it's not like Band-Aid medicine, which is what typical medicine is these days. So that's what it really is. Find the cause, fix the cause so you can feel normal again.
So this is really important for really anybody because it could be anything from, experiencing stress to being tired, so fatigue, maybe there's some chronic pain issues or inflammation. So this can really impact a whole variety of medical issues, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, any symptoms that you're having, that's a warning sign that something is out of balance in your body. And a lot of times people will ignore symptoms like, oh, I have some heartburn, I'll just take some Tums, or I didn't eat something, very good today, or they're starting to feel tired and they just blame it on, well, I'm under stress, I need to get more sleep, and then they're medicating themselves with caffeine and sugar. So symptoms come from somewhere, and when you ignore them, the symptoms will get stronger and stronger, and it's like if you don't feel the pebble being thrown at you, one day you're going to have a brick thrown at you.
Right.
And then that's actually usually when patients actually come in to see me, is when they've had the brick thrown at them.
Well, hopefully we can give them a couple of things today that will, prevent them from having to wait until that happens.
Yes.
So there's low energy is kind of a big deal, just both in the entrepreneurial world and really with everyone. I'm reading here that there's 4 common nutrients that some people are deficient in and that can cause that. What are those?
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. So fatigue is very common, and I suffered with fatigue myself. So I have my own story about how fatigue affected me and how basically I had to treat myself to figure out where my fatigue was coming from. And a common story that I hear when patients come into my office is that they've gone to their family doctor, had some testing done to find out where their fatigue is coming from. And often the family doctor, their blood work comes back and they'll say like, everything's normal. I don't really know what's wrong. Maybe it's a good time for you to take a vacation. or maybe you're starting a burnout and you need to take 3 months off of work, or maybe you should try some antidepressants. So that's a very common story when patients come to see me, that that's been their experience, but they know deep down inside that there is something out of balance. And so one of the things that I look for, I'm always looking for the root of the cause of the fatigue or the insomnia, because that can also cause fatigue. One thing that often pops up are nutrient deficiencies, and a very common one is vitamin D. And I live in Canada at this point, and I mean, anybody living in Canada pretty much has a vitamin D deficiency. But also, if you're living in the US, I mean, you could be living in Miami and you could still have a vitamin D deficiency. And the only way to really know is to have your blood levels checked. And vitamin D is known as the sunshine vitamin. And so if your levels are low, it would be like your body has gone into hibernation mode. And that's where the fatigue comes in. So that's one of the very common nutrients that I find as being deficient.
So vitamin D, there's, I'm sure, tons of others that really you have to kind of take a blood test to figure out what's going on there.
Yeah.
But it's important because a lot of people, I actually have a good friend of mine, and he's just tired all the time, and he just kind of accepted it as being the truth and how he's going to live his life. And
Yeah.
it could be, something as simple as taking a vitamin D pill?
Yeah, it could be vitamin D. The other ones that I find are B12 and magnesium and zinc. Those are the 4 ones that I often find with my fatigue patients. Now, that's just part of the puzzle. So that's the thing in functional medicine, that it's a puzzle that we have to put together. So nutrient deficiencies are one piece of the puzzle of fatigue, and usually there's other things going on too.
Yeah, and so I'm sure a lot of people probably supplement with caffeine to try and counteract that, and then it could cause a number of other things like maybe heartburn, stomach aches, all sorts of issues there. So I'd imagine that you kind of figure out one thing and then it's like, well, wait, there's like this other thing you were doing that's affecting 3 more things. So it definitely is a process, I guess, right?
It is a process. I tell my patients it's a process and a journey that we go on. And in my role, my role is like I'm the doctor, but then I'm also the coach. And sometimes I'm the cheerleader, to just try and keep them motivated. And sometimes I'm the disciplinarian, where I say like, man, you know what you should be doing. Why aren't you doing it? So
Right.
in my office, I play all these different roles, but really it's between me and the patient, it's a team. It's a team approach. Whereas I think a lot of doctors don't take that approach with their patients.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. So I was thinking about what you just said there, and so I know personally, like, I'm not the best with flossing my teeth, right? So I always go to the dentist. They're like, you need to floss more, right? I always brush my teeth, but flossing, not as consistent, right? And, it's always the dentist saying, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this. How do you hold your patients accountable to make sure that they do this? Because it's like, if you don't do it, obviously you're going to keep having the same problem, but that's kind of what got them here in the first place. So how can we like motivate people to go and actually take care of this?
Oh, that's a really good question. So I guess for some people, it's you have to hold a carrot out there. You have to dangle a carrot in front of them to motivate them. And for other patients, they need like to be whipped in the behind. And that's what motivates them. So it's a very individual thing. So for some patients, we'll set a goal of, okay, diet. So let's take diet because that's a big one. And that's a big hurdle for a lot of people, and it's very scary for a lot of people, the thought of changing their diet, like, oh my God, I can never eat gluten again. So I'll tell them, okay, so we need to get you from A to B. Let's just take one step forward. If you had to climb Mount Everest, it would be quite a daunting task. But you can do it just by putting one step in front of the other. Like, it's that simple. Just step by step. So when we talk about changing the diet, we'll just start with, I'll say, like, breakfast. Okay, what can we do for your breakfast? How can we change it? And let's just focus on breakfast. Don't worry about lunch right now. Don't worry about dinner. Let's just work on breakfast. And if it takes you a couple of weeks to master breakfast, like a gluten-free breakfast, that's okay. But once you've mastered that, then we're going to take the next step, which is to start working on lunch. And usually that step-by-step process is more manageable. So sometimes it's also just figuring out how much the patient can manage too, and still be moving forward and still be motivated. It's quite tricky because everybody's so different.
Right. And this probably applies to really goal setting anywhere in life, right? Like instead
Absolutely.
of looking at the Everest, let's look at the first 1,000 feet, because Everest is
Exactly.
thousands of feet. I don't know the exact number in my head, but I think Kilimanjaro is like 14,000, so I know Everest is much taller than that. But yeah, so looking at the first part of it instead of saying, all right, oh my gosh, I have to do this whole thing, right?
Yes.
Cool. So I've also saw something about how the brain plays a pretty big role in fatigue too. So it might not just be, you have a lack of going out and being in the sunlight because it's winter time. What could also be going on inside the brain that could be affecting this?
So some people, their fatigue really is all in their head. And I say that kind of tongue in cheek because your brain chemistry could be out of balance. And for my fatigue, that was a big driver of my fatigue. And once I figured out what the right amino acids I needed to take were in the right balance to get my serotonin and dopamine in good balance, it was like the lights turned on and like all the neurons were firing again, and that happened within a week. So for some people, the real root cause is in their brain. So it could be an imbalance between the neurotransmitters. It could be that their brain just is not getting enough oxygen. That people tend to breathe from their chest instead of belly breathing. They tend to hold their breath too. It could be that the brain isn't getting enough blood. So like a lot of people have cold hands and cold feet, even a cold nose. Those are all signs of poor circulation, but that also means your brain is not getting enough circulation also, not enough glucose to fuel it. So there's many different ways that the brain can be involved in fatigue. So I find a lot of doctors forget about the brain. They worry about from the neck down, but they kind of forget about that the brain could be a factor as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty big deal. That's the thing that controls the rest of this, right?
Yeah.
Well,
It's a very big deal.
Yeah. Now you got me thinking / not totally worried, but I have just personally, I'm 6'2", I'm fairly tall. I don't have the best circulation. Actually, most of the time, either just my feet or like the tips of my fingers will be cold quite often, even if I'm in a warm room.
Yeah.
So what sort of things are maybe steps to take to control something as simple as that?
To help that.
Yeah.
Do you want some treatment options?
Well, maybe just a couple of tips or little things, because I know that if that means that maybe my brain isn't receiving enough either, maybe I'm not at full capacity. I mean, I'm a fairly creative person, but maybe I'm missing out here.
Yeah, so for you and the other viewers and listeners out there, because this is a very common scenario. So one is to make sure that you don't have an anemia. So to check your iron levels and your B12 levels. And then 2 is to have your thyroid checked, because you could have a low thyroid even if, the common test for thyroid is a TSH, and that could come back as normal, but you could still have thyroid problems going on underneath the surface. So like really a full thyroid panel, which would include free T3, free T4, antibodies, reverse T3. Not to get too overly technical. We want to rule those things out. And then if those come back as normal, one very simple thing that you could start doing today, and your listeners and your viewers, in traditional Chinese medicine, there are foods that are considered warming foods, and there are foods that are considered cooling foods, and there are foods that are considered neutral. So Chinese medicine is all about the balance of the yin and the yang. So warming foods have more yang to them. I don't know how the Chinese, ever, figured all of this out. Warming foods have more yang. So you could do a very simple internet search about traditional Chinese medicine, warming foods. Find the foods that are the warming foods, eat more of those. Find the foods that are the cooling foods, eat less of those. I've had patients do that, and their circulation, their hands and their feet are warm again, and their nose is warm again, and which means they're getting more oxygen and blood and nutrients up into their brain just by doing that.
And this goes without saying, because I don't want people to go and start Googling whatever disease they think they might have. Like,
Yeah.
obviously, this is something that you always go to a doctor for, get a blood test. Don't start Googling it and thinking that you have some crazy disease, because sometimes it could be something much simpler as you're deficient in, one nutrient, and you just have to take, another supplement for it.
Yeah, making those changes in your diet, that's a pretty safe option that anybody could use, but you're right. You could have something more serious going on.
Yeah. So, and real quick, sleep is obviously important for a lot of things. I'm very active in fitness, and it helps with recovery, among other things. There's this expression of, I'll sleep when I'm dead. And I'm sure
Right.
I've said it tons of times because, when I was in college, I would sometimes stay awake for like 3 days straight because I was working so much and then pass out for like a day and a half. And why is this really harmful to our system to do this and be okay with doing this?
So I guess first off, we all go through periods like that. I mean, when I went back to school to get my naturopathic degree, I was a chiropractor first, and then 15 years into practice, I decided to go back to school and get a second doctoral degree. I really had to suck it up for 2 years because that was a lot of intense pressure and stress. And I was kind of like, as you said, I'll sleep when I'm dead. I just got to suck it up during these 2 years. But I find a lot of, especially entrepreneurs, have that attitude day in and day out. And that will really start robbing your health. So some of the research that I've done on sleep, it's very interesting. The Centers for Disease Control, the CDC in the US, has found that sleep deprivation is a public epidemic at this point.
Really?
And so that is, they qualify that as 6 hours of sleep or less a night. That it's a public epidemic, and that has multiple effects on your body that weakens your immune system. It makes you more hungry, so you tend to gain weight. So maybe that's part of the obesity epidemic as well. It puts you at more risk for having cancers and heart disease, diabetes, all kinds of stuff. So I know a lot of people out there have trouble sleeping. It's one of the first questions that I ask a patient when they come into my office and they have fatigue. It's like, okay, you have fatigue. How is your sleep? Are you having trouble falling asleep? Are you having trouble staying asleep? Because there are causes for that too. And obviously, some of those are pure lifestyle factors, like staying up too late at night, watching the TV, or worse than that is being on the computer, being on your tablet or your cell phone, because that light from those computer screens and cell phone screens are actually much, much brighter than your typical television screen is. And what happens is you're creating an imbalance of melatonin, which is your sleep hormone. If you're not getting enough of your sleep hormone, you're not going to sleep very well. So some things are lifestyle related, but then there can be imbalances within the body too that is driving poor sleep. But when a person has that attitude of I'll sleep when I'm dead, it's like it is a ticking time bomb. Because something, like I said earlier, you're going to have pebbles thrown at you, but one day you're going to have a brick whap you upside your head.
And it's not going to be fun.
Your health is just like tanked.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So that's really interesting. I mean, I have always dealt with sleep things throughout my life. I have never been the greatest sleeper. I'm glad you told me a little bit about the computer screens. I kind of knew a little bit about that, and it was one of those things that you kind of ignore and brush off. So maybe I'll be a little more careful with how soon towards when I'm going to sleep that I am actually on the computer or on my phone. That's a really good tip.
Yeah, I was just, when you said that, I was just thinking, I saw something yesterday on the internet about, it's a pair of glasses that you can buy that can filter out. I guess it's, in the visible spectrum of light, it's the blue rays that are coming off of those screens that really messes us up.
Yeah.
So I saw something on the internet yesterday where you can buy these glasses that you can wear to block those blue rays so that you can, read your tablet or be on your computer late at night. I don't know if it works, but for people that have to put in long hours when they're in that period of time of stress, and you just got to suck it up and get through it, that could be an option.
So it's really cool that you bring that up, actually, because I have this program that's on my computer called Flux, Flux, And what it does is as the day goes by, usually in the morning it's blue, and it tints the screen. So by the time it's nighttime, if I open up my laptop at like 8 or 9 o'clock at night, it actually is kind of like a tinted bright orange color. And it's harder on your eyes. It makes me kind of want to fall asleep a little bit. So I don't know if you've seen this before, but...
No, I just wrote it down, so I'm going to look at that. Thank you for that tip.
Yeah, it's free for the Mac. It could be on the PC. I'm not totally sure, but Flux. It's really neat. I downloaded it, installed it in like 30 seconds, and it tints the screen as the day goes by. So
all right.
Something cool to check out.
I will check that out. Thank you.
Yeah.
This is one of the reasons why I love doing podcasts. You know, I have my own podcast, so I have a lot of guests on.
Yeah.
But also when I'm being interviewed, I always get a little nugget, a nugget of, you know, a tip, something that I can use in my practice with patients or with my business. I love it.
Well, I'd be curious to see, you know, if you do get a chance to check it out, what your opinion is of it, because, you know, a lot of the time some of this stuff is not necessarily fake, but it doesn't work as effectively as the concept is supposed to. So I'm curious.
Of course, buyer beware.
Yeah. I'm curious what your take is on that once you get a chance to check that out.
Okay.
So something else you work on quite a lot is allergies, right?
Yes.
So I have a weird allergy, sweet potatoes. It is the only thing I am allergic to. I can't eat them. It messes up my stomach pretty bad. I'm curious, you know, what sort of allergy problems do you see in people? I know gluten intolerance is quite a big issue recently, right?
Yeah, gluten has gotten a lot of press over the last couple of years. And I think there's a certain amount of people out there that think that that's like a fad, but it's not a fad. There's like a stack of research on how bad gluten is for the body. But food allergies and food sensitivities very commonly undermine people's health. And just as you said, you're allergic to sweet potato. I mean, you could have a food allergy or sensitivity to anything, even the most healthy foods. I have one patient that was coming in, and she had for 4 years severe stomach pains. And she had every test done. She was seeing the gastroenterologist. She was seeing the gynecologist just to make sure everything was okay. They ran every test they could not find the cause. So she ended up in my office. I don't know how, but we were going through her program, and I said we were at a point of checking for food sensitivities. So I put her on like an elimination diet, and she found out that she was sensitive to coconut.
Wow.
Now, coconut is like the food of the year right now.
I eat coconut oil and everything.
Exactly. Yeah, coconut oil, coconut water, coconut milk, coconut everything. And as soon as she took coconut out of her diet, the pains are gone. Like just gone. Absolutely, completely. So we were talking a little bit earlier about fatigue. So we could take 10 people and line them up, and let's say they all have a sensitivity to eggs. Mm-hmm. Well, one might have fatigue from eggs. The second might have aches and pains in their joints from eggs and think like they have arthritis, when actually it's just a food sensitivity. Another one might get headaches or migraines from eating eggs. Another one might get depression from eating eggs. The next one might have anxiety from eating eggs. The next one might have skin rashes. So the thing with food sensitivities is they are considered the great mimicker. They can create any symptom in your body. And that's part of what makes me so jazzed about being a functional medicine doc, is it's really about being like a health detective to really find the root underlying cause. So with food sensitivities, there's the common ones like gluten in eggs and dairy, soy and corn. But then there's weird things like you have. That's a very strange food sensitivity
like everyone
to
eats
have
sweet
is
potatoes.
to sweet potatoes. They're so healthy, but you could be sensitive to the most healthy foods. Like my patient there who is sensitive to coconut. I mean, you just don't know. But for the listeners out there and the viewers out there, if you're struggling with your health, really what I want you to get out of this is to have hope, because your symptoms are coming from somewhere, and it's just a matter of time and finding the right doctor and running the right tests and figuring out what the real cause is. So I think that's really part of my purpose, is also to give people hope in that regards.
And not placing a Band-Aid over it, you know, like you said, like taking Tums doesn't fix heartburn, it just makes it go away for the night so you can fall asleep. and same thing with
Exactly.
Advil or Tylenol. That headache happened for a reason. Maybe you haven't had enough water today, maybe you have lack of oxygen, but the
Yeah.
Tylenol doesn't give you more oxygen. It's
Yeah.
making you not
It's not
feel that
it's not a
headache.
Tylenol deficiency.
Right, right. So, how about, not everyone listening is an entrepreneur, but everyone that is listening can be affected by functional medicine. Do you have maybe like your 3 to 5 best things that like everyone should be practicing? Maybe you've seen your most common issues in everybody, from whether it's headaches or heartburn or things like that. What are like your top few tips to give to people just to kind of take care of their own bodies and to make sure that at least they're helping their body to function a little better than it already is?
So that's a big question that you want me to answer. So I guess the first thing is that the first and the most important is the mindset that your health really is your most precious asset. And for business owners out there, I tell them, your most precious business asset is your health. And to really understand that with your mindset and to put your health first, to make it a priority, and to take responsibility for your own health. So that right there, that's a big one right there, just number one off the list. Number two, diet and food. Food really is your medicine. Food was the first medicine. It continues to be the most important thing that you can have an impact on your body with. So for the viewers out there and the listeners, you know what you should be eating and you know what you should not be eating. So take small steps. Starting today, take some small steps. Have an extra serving of vegetables on your plate. If that's a small step you take, that's perfect because you're going in a better direction with your health. And then the third, I guess, would be getting back to sleep. We were talking about that earlier, to really try and get good sleep. So the research on sleep says that the ideal amount of sleep is between 7.5 to 9 hours of sleep. And one thing that I find that helps me immensely and has helped the majority of my patients is very simply wearing an eye mask when you sleep at night, because that eye mask will help block out any little bits of light that are creeping in, around your window blinds, light from your alarm clock, from your electronic devices. All of those little bits of light will blunt your melatonin production. So simply wearing an eye mask, I've had like 80% of the time that gets people, they might not sleep more hours, but they'll get deeper sleep and they'll wake up feeling more rested. So those are 3 things that everybody could start doing.
Very cool. It's funny that you say that about the sleep thing, because my room's fairly dark at night, but I don't have blackout shades. Like you can see, I have these type of blinds, so
Yes,
if the neighbor's light in their backyard comes on, you can see it through the window. And same thing goes for even the little stuff. Like, I'm a videographer, so oftentimes I'll be charging batteries overnight or something like that, and on the charger there's pretty bright like green light that's blinking. And sure enough, when I close my eyes, I can tell if there's like a little light in my room. So that's really good to know that it makes a big difference to do that.
It's just simple little things can make the biggest impact.
Yeah. Well, it's been really great to have you here today. What do you recommend as far as, if someone listening right now wants to get checked out, what's the first step in the process for them to find someone to work with?
Well, I guess the best resource that they could use to find a functional medicine doctor is do an internet search for the Institute for Functional Medicine. I think their website is functionalmedicine.org. I'm not really sure, but if you find their website for the Institute for Functional Medicine, they have a link on there to find a doctor.
Awesome.
So that's a way. And then if they want to learn more about me, I guess the best place that they could go, because I've got my private practice website and my book website and all kinds of websites now. My home base would be at drcarri.com, spelled drcarri.com, and that's where they can find my podcast,
Great.
the Functional Medicine Radio Show, and then my blogs, and then soon will be coming Dr. Carri TV as well.
Very nice. Well, that's really exciting when that gets started. Definitely let me know. I'm happy to help you out with any video needs there.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, you would be a good resource.
And what was remind me the name of your book again so people can check it out if they're looking for it.
Oh, yeah. My book is called Reclaim Your Energy and Feel Normal Again, Fixing the Root Cause of Your Fatigue with Natural Treatments. And you can find it at my website or you can find it on Amazon. It's available in paperback and Kindle forms.
Perfect. And just for everybody listening or watching, we have this podcast both on iTunes and Stitcher Radio and YouTube and a million other places. But
everywhere.
There is video and audio, and there are show notes that go with this. So for everyone listening or watching, on www.yearofpurpose.com, we actually have some links to the things that we mentioned here in this episode. So you guys can check that out too. Thanks so much for being here today, Carri. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will be talking to you soon. Definitely let me know how that flux goes if you get to use that out. Let me know what you think of it.
I will. Thank you so much for having me on the show today.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. You've probably heard me talk about designing a life that you actually want to live. You might have even heard about my travels or experiences and thought to yourself, yeah, I do want to do that. Eventually, someday I'll probably do it, and my guess is that you've been thinking about doing it for a long time. So I want to tell you this. Stop thinking. Your time is right now. You don't need any more time. You don't need any more info. You don't need to keep putting it off and planning for the perfect time, because the truth of the matter is this. You could be the person who sits around and thinks about living a better life, or you can be the person that decides that today is the day that you're going to actually do it, and I want that for you. Because you already have what it takes. You've got a fire inside. Even if you can't see it right now, it's lit, but you need to open yourself up to the possibilities and throw a couple logs into the flames. So join me and the Year of Purpose tribe by subscribing to our YouTube channel and iTunes podcast. And if you really like us, please leave a review. This is Zephan Moses Blacksburg, and I can't wait to see you again on the Year of Purpose podcast.